Hola. Hey,
How are you doing?
good. We said 4 o'clock, I think. Am I correct?
4 o'clock, that's what I heard.
Okay.
Then again, you heard 9:30 too.
No, that one I read. uh, let's see. Yeah. Okay, I'll be right there.
For Purim, do you guys do anything for Ernie?
We have not. We were thinking about it. No, we didn't do this year. Usually we do something like very grand when he finished at the Siyum. So I think that's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hello, hello.
Hello.
okay. As soon as we finish the Megillah, I'll watch it.
We are on Chav Gimel.
Okay.
So-
What is it?
We said, Krichos the loaves b'shus harabim are elu shalo. He can keep them. Mishum de midrasa.
We're in Chav Gimel in the middle.
Chav Gimel on the top. On the
Oh, you're
midrasa.
on the top. Okay, I don't know why.
The
Okay.
public tramples.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
The public tramples on the loaves. Even if there was a simon in there, the simon would go away because people are going to trample it. But b'shus hayachid, no telomachriz, because the lo midrasa in a private domain, people are not going to trample on it, so the simon will remain. So you can announce it. Then the alumos were the big ones, the big sheaves. Bein b'shus hayachid, bein b'shus harab, no telomachriz, you have to announce it. Even the gabei and lo midrasa, these big ones, they're so tall, nobody can step on it, and the simon remains intact. So the owner can get access to it. Rava Metartzel Tameh. Rava explained according to his way. Krichos b'shus harabim re'elu shalo. The small sheaves, the Rishus Harabim can keep. the Menishtafa, it rolls and is kicked. So because remember, Rava put emphasis on the place of where you found it. Well, the place you found is not going to be relevant because they're small. They can roll from place to place. So there's no purpose in being machriz the makom. So therefore, you keep them. B'rshus hayachid, in a private domain where people are not walking around, they're not kicking it. Chayv la'achriz de lo mishtafa, because it doesn't roll, and therefore the original owner will be able to identify where it is because the makom will remain where it was. Now the alumos, the large stalks, so they're not rollable. They're heavy. They can't roll from place to place. They'll remain where they were. And therefore, you'd always have to be machris. Krichos shel nachton. Kikar shel nachton. Loaves from a baker. Harelu shelo. Now, if they were habalabayis, if they were not baker loaves, but they belonged to the householder, then you'd have to announce it. Why? Shalbalabais my timer. Kiven disbu simin. When they bake bread, people used to put some kind of simin in the loaf to know that it was their loaf. They made the other ifta the inishin issue. Everyone identified their loaves based on certain simonim that they would put in the loaf, or the way they baked it. And lo shna b'shus harabim, lo shna b'shus hayochid, and therefore noitelo machriz. Whether it was in a private domain or a public domain, since there was a unique siman in the loaf, so you always declared it. You couldn't keep it. Alma siman he'asu l'doris havi siman. This is now a proof to the Manda Omar who held that a siman, even if the siman could get crushed, is still a good siman. And here, where we said that the loaf of a balabayis, even if it's in Rosh Hashanah, you have to declare it, even though it was, the siman is a type of siman that could be destroyed, it's still a good siman. It's a kashan rabba. Armlacha rabba, there's a different reason why over there you have to declare it. Mishum, she'ein mavrin ala oichlin. You have to be careful when you walk by food, not to step on it. You have to have respect for food. You pick it up because the food has covet. I always remember my grandmother telling me, we shouldn't throw your food because, food, you have to have respect for your food. So the Gemara says, Va'ika nochrim, non-Jews, they don't have the same covet for food. Why aren't we concerned that if you leave something in the public domain, the nochrim will squash the siman? So the Gemara says, no. Nochrim chayshu l'kshofim. Witches and warlocks would use food for their incantations and spells. And therefore, they're careful not to step on food. What about animals and dogs that walk through the streets? They could step on the loaves and get rid of the siman. So the Gemara says, when do you return it and have to announce be machriz it? When there's not a lot of animals or dogs there. If there were a lot of animals or dogs there, you'd be able to keep the behemoths. You'd be able to keep the item, the bread. Lema kitanoi. Let us say that this machlokas between Rabba and Rava regarding whether a siman that can be wiped away through stepping on is a siman or not. Rav Yehuda Omer, kol davar sheyesh bo shinui, chayv la'achris. Anything that is different, you have to announce. Ketza. Matzah eagle of the sochel cheres. We said in our Mishnah, if you found a circle of pressed figs, and within there was a piece of pottery, or kikar u'v'sochomos, or a loaf of bread, and inside the bread was money, then you would declare it. The Tanakama did not make such a distinction. Why? Tanakama savar that even if you found these things, hare elu shelo, you could keep it, because savrua the kula al nesimin haba me'elav. Initially, everyone thought that a simin that is in an object, not because the owner put it there, but because of the way it was made or shaped, it's still habi simin. It's a simin. They also held that you can pass by food without picking it up. Now, my love, so these Tanoim are dealing with simin or asilidoris komiflugi. They're dealing with simonim that could be erased through stepping on. The Tanakama Marsavar lo avi simin. The reason he doesn't treat it as a simin is because it could be strapped on. Umar Savar Rabbi Yehuda says avi simin. So maybe the Gemara is found in Machlokas Tanoim similar to Rab and Rava. No, Amar Azrish made a Rava. Isak that the conservative Tanakama. If you're going to tell me that the Tanakama holds simin esrei lidoris lavi simin, a simin that could be destroyed is not a good simin, and mavir nala oichlin, and you don't have to pick food up when you see it. So kikar shel balabayis p'shus harabim, amay machris. Even the Tanakama held that loaves that belong to a householder that you find in Rosh Hashanah, you have to declare. Now in Rosh Hashanah, these loaves are going to be stepped on, and the simon's going to go away. If they hold that a simon that can be stepped on goes away, then why would you have to be machris this? So the way we've set up this machlokas is not correct. Ella Amrav Zvid Ishmei Ravad Kula Masavri Simin Asuli Doris Havi Simin. A simin that could potentially be stepped on and wiped away is still a good simin. And Mavir Nala Oichlin. And you can also hold that you can pass by food and not pick it up. So what's the machlokas? Hacha simin abamelev kamiflagi. The Bala, no one put a simin in these things. There's a simin memela because there's a piece of pottery in it or whatever. Shatana comes over simin abamelev lavi simin. The owner of the object himself doesn't know about the simin. Therefore, it's not a good simin. But Rav Yehuda Savar havi simin. But Rabba Amrlacha, Kula al Nesimin Asuli Doris Lavi Simin. That's his shita. That a simin that could be wiped away is not a good simin. However, everyone holds Ein Mavrin ala Oichlin. If you see food, you have to pick it up. So Hacha b'simin haba me'elav kamiflagi. A simin that arises naturally. Tanakama Savar also lavi simin. Rav Yehuda Savar lavi simin. Ikidiyam. Other people learn different. That the kulam the simin haba me'elav havi simin. Even a simin that the owner didn't put into the item, but it's just there, it's a good simin. And simin asuli doris lavi simin. A simin that could come to be wiped away is not a good simin. And my love, they're point of machlokes is whether or not you pass by food and you pick it up or not. Mar savar, mavirin, that you can pass by food and therefore get stepped on. Mar savar, you hold savar shein mavirin. So the siman remains, so you can announce it. Amr azvid mishmei derava. Isakedak savar tanakama siman asli doris lavi siman. If we're going to hold that the Tanakama says that a siman that can be wiped away is not a good siman, and you can pass by food without picking up. So kikar shabalabayis b'shusarabi my machris. Loaves that were baked at home, why should you announce it? The siman's going to go away, it's going to be stepped on. So Amr Zid Mishmei Rava the Kula Masavri. That's why you announce a balabayis loaf. And yet you can pass by, but rather, it's not considered a siman according to Tanakama. It was a savar habi siman. Rabba Amar Lacha Kula Al Siman Asur Doris Lavi siman. If it could be wiped away, it's not a siman. And Ein Bavir Na'ochlim. And you pick up food. Okay. Klala Davidita, the principle regarding lost objects. Kiven Shomer Vai Lol Kisorin Kiss. You hear the owner say, "Oh, woe is to me that I lost all this money because I lost this object." That's a siman that he has abandoned hope of finding it. Amrazvid, Mishmei Derava, Yelchazot Krichos B'Shusarabim or Elu Shalom. Clothes found in the public, you keep it. B'Shusayachid, Iderch Nefila. If it looks like the guy just dropped it, you can keep it. If it looks like it was placed carefully, then you have to announce it. If it doesn't have a sim, in what we were saying up until now, we're talking about something that doesn't have a siman. Something that has a siman, b'shusarabim v'loshna, loshna b'shusarabim, loshna b'shusayachid, bein derech nefila, bein derech hanocha chayiv lahakris. You have to announce it. It has a siman, even though it's loaves of bread, he's not misyayish from it. Chav gimel amid beis. Umachrozos shel dogim. These are like strings of fish. Now, why can you keep it? Lavi akesher siman. Let the knot that was used to tie the fish is siman. So Bekatra decided to call standard hunter's knots. Everyone uses the same knot. Ulahavi minyan, siman. Why can't, let's say there's a dozen fish? So, b'minyana deshavin, in that town, there was a standard stringing of fish. You always put 6 fish. So the number is not a siman. Boimini Rav Sheshes. Minyan, havi siman or lo havi siman? Is having a count of something a siman or not a siman? So, Amar Rav Sheshes to Nisua. Matzah klei chesed v'klei nechoshes. You found silver or copper vessels. Gisterin shel aver, pieces of lead. V'kol kli matchos, or any metal kelim. Areze lo yachzir. Ad sheyitin ois. Until the owner gives a siman. Or ad sheyichavin mishkaloisav. or he tells you exactly what weight each kli is. So, the number and also the measurement would be a siman as well. Then the Mishnah said, Chatichos shel basar. If you find pieces of meat, you can keep it. Amai lavi mishkel is siman. Let the weight be a siman. B'mishkel adishav, we're talking about standard weight that everyone got sold a pound of meat. V'tevi chaticha gufa siman. What about the cut of meat? It's a shoulder, it's a lamb shoulder, it's a lamb chop. Oda dafka, oda atma, for example, the neck or the thigh. Milo Tanya, didn't we learn matzah chatichos dagim odag noshuch? You found fish or a fish that was bitten. Chayv lahachris. You found barrels of wine or oil or grain or figs. Shel zaysim or elu shelo. So fish are viewed as something that has a siman. You could say from what piece of the fish it's from. So, that when they cut up the fish, they were cut in a certain way that you could figure out whose it was. He would cut a piece of meat like a triangle. Dekanami, diktani domi ledag nashuch. Similarly, we said to a fish that had a bite out, taken out of it. Shmami no, that fish cut in a certain way would be a siman. Amar Mar. Chaviel shel yaim v'shel shemen v'shel tfuah v'shel gargas shel zaysim. Barrels of wine, oil, grain, figs, or elu shelo, you can keep it. Ayvatnan kadiyam kadishem chayv lachris. Jugs of wine and oil you have to announce. Amar zemarav mastisen beroshum. The barrel was sealed. And the kadiyam and kadishem that were sealed with a special, unique seal, those are ones you have to announce. Michlal de Beraisa, which said that you can keep the barrels. Are you dealing with an open chavis? Even pasuach aveda midasi. Open barrels of wine is gonna turn to vinegar. So that's certainly going to be something you can keep. It's obvious that the owner gave up of getting it back. Amar Vashaya, he explains the Baraisa b'matziv. It was covered, but not completely sealed with glue. Both cases are talking about barrels completely sealed. Like kasha, in the Khan, the Mishnah said you have to return it. Is kodim sheniftechu ha'otzros, before everybody opens up their storage of yayin that they're going to sell to the public, and the seal on this barrel is going to prove that the owner is the one who did it. But when we say you're permitted to keep the barrel, Khan, after all of the wine and vinegar storages have opened up, so the original owner already sold it to other people. It goes from one to one. So to be able to look at the seal of the barrel to know whose it is, that doesn't exist anymore. He found a barrel of wine after the market had opened. Also, you can keep it, you don't have to announce it. Rav Bibi Rav Nachman. You say, I found this in a corner farmer's market. Is that a good siman or not? Now, if you found these barrels, you can keep it. If the place that you found it is a siman, so lichros b'makom, he should announce where he found these barrels. Or he found a barrel somewhere and the owner has to come and say, Rav Zvid, that's not a proof. These were found at the edge of the river where the boats are unloaded. And there's always a lot of schorah there. There's the place of identifying where they were found is not a simon because there's tons of stuff there. However, my time in Rabbon and Roxas and our Lavi simon. How come the Chachamim said that the edge of a river is not a good simon? Just like you might have lost something, somebody else may have lost something. If you don't give a simon, you can't get it back. Ikedi Amri. Rav Mary, my time Amr Chachamim, Malcolm Lavi Simon. How come the Chachamim said that declaring the place where you found it is not a good simon? Damrina lay, just like you lost something here, your friend lost something here. He found some pitch or tar near like a ditch. Also, what do we do? You can keep it. He was concerned that maybe I don't own it fully. Fine, give me a piece of it. So if you give me a piece of it, I'm willing to accept it. I'm certainly giving you confidence that the halacha is correct. Lema kosova Rav, Malkum Lavi Simon. Maybe Rav holds that Malkum is not a Simon. Rav Abba, Mishum Yesh Bolam Nagubo. Rav here is because he was clear that the owners had the bad hope of getting it back. The Chazad the Chadchi Bechilfi. He saw that there was already grasses growing in this piece of tar, which was placed a long time. So certainly he must have abandoned it. Rav Shimon Elazar Omer, that a Kliyan Puria you don't have to announce. Mayim Puria Amar Yidam Shmuel Kelim Chadoshim Shlo Savatana Ayin. It's a very new vessel. It's not. The owner hasn't had it for a long time to be able to recognize it. Hechidami. Ispu Simin. If there's a Simin, Kilo Savatana Ayin Mayavi. Who cares that he hasn't had it for a long time? Yeah, he knows what the Simin is. Either Lesbu Simin. Now, if there was no Simin, who cares that he's used to it? There's no simon. How is he going to recognize it? We are talking about a case where there's no simon. We said before that a Talmid Chacham can look at something, and with just Tvias Ayin, with recognizing it, he can get it returned to him. So if a Talmid Chacham comes, that we believe him, even without a simon, so if these are older Kalim, Savat Naim Kilmu Gavai, we trust that the Talmid Chacham had enough time to be makar them. But if they're new, Kilo Savat Naim Lo Kilmu Gavai, and Lo Madrina, we would not return to Tzur Rabbanon B'Tfiya side. Amir Amar Shmuel, Bahani Tlas Mili Avi Rabbanon Demishan Milayu. Talmid Chacham were allowed to sort of tell a white lie in three things. The Maseches, for example, if somebody asks a Talmid Chacham, did he learn a certain Masechtas? He can say, I didn't learn it, even though he did learn it. Urbe Puria, if they ask him, did you sleep on this bed? He can say no, because maybe they found something embarrassing there and it would cause an embarrassment. Uvu Shpiza. He can say that a certain hotel didn't receive him nicely, so that people shouldn't bombard that, not a hotel, a guest, not a guest, somebody who brought him in as a guest. He's allowed to say, I wasn't treated that well, in order so it won't encourage a lot of people to go and be matriach that person. Okay. Tomorrow, 5:30.